Hi, everyone. Welcome to the show. This week I have Michael Wong and Kevin Lee on the show. They're the creators of ESL, an animated series. They're currently working on a pilot and a whole first season so they can pitch it to production companies. Their show is an animated sitcom about a group of international students who go to university in the United States. They are otherwise known as English as a Second Language Kids, ESL Kids. I had a great time talking to them about how the show came about. So without further ado, let's get to it. We have the creators, Michael Wong and Kevin Lee here, who are Taiwanese Americans living in Taiwan and went to TAS. How are you guys doing?
Great, good. Man. Yeah, feeling good.
It's me, Alex.
Can we start from Michael? Can you first give an introduction of yourself and who you are and all that good stuff?
Sure. So I am. So this is the question. Sorry,
started with the hardest question. My bad.
This is the hardest question for kids like us: is where are we from and who we are? Because if I'm going to get into the details, I would have to give you years and years I was here in Taiwan and years I was in the States and where I was in the States and where I was in Taiwan.
Yeah.
It starts to get, if you really start to parse it out, it's kind of hard to say. So, but so if you, I'll give you two. All right,
No. You bring up an interesting point because for me too, because I grew up around places in Asia and I went to a bunch of different schools. I kind of depends on the person I'm talking to, right? So, if I know your background, you have the similar background as me, I can break it down for you and you'll understand, right? But if I'm in the States. Talking to a person who's from the States, maybe lived in Boston, because where I went to school their whole lives, I'll just be like, "Oh, I'm from DC."
Yeah, just give a summed up version because you know the questions that will follow if you know.
Yeah, I don't want a drawn out 10-minute conversation.
Right.
All right, I'm from DC. Let's proceed accordingly.
You get it, man. You get it 100%. That's exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah. So then, but both of you guys' backgrounds, live in America, live in Taiwan. Mm-hmm. Because of that, you drew upon those experiences and created the show ESL. Can we talk a little bit about your backgrounds first? I guess just how that was growing up in both America and Taiwan and the comedy in it or, maybe the hard parts of moving around and trying to assimilate. Kevin?
Sure. So I think Michael and I have a little, our experiences are similar, but it's still a little different in some ways in that I never really grew up in the States. I never really lived there. Until my college years. I was born there, but I grew up mostly in Taipei, and I actually went to local school for my early elementary years because my parents thought it's important for me to have a Mandarin foundation, and then I went to Taipei American School in 5th grade, and that's just all the way to high school, graduated, and then I went to Seattle for college.
Okay, so Kevin, you was born and raised here basically, and then you went to the States just for college.
Yep.
Okay, and how was the culture shock there? Because you went to TAS, and it is an American school, but
it is, yeah.
It's far different from living
Definitely.
in the States.
And I didn't find that out until I was actually in college, and the first day, orientation started, and I thought transitioning from an American school in Taipei to an American college, just the same thing, right? But I realized it's funny because I actually spoke more Mandarin in the 4 years in the States than I did at TAS in Taiwan. Really, I didn't mean for that to happen. I just naturally hung out with the Taiwanese kids who were studying abroad. That was my circle. I didn't intentionally hung out with them or not hung out with anyone else. It's just that's what happened.
You kind of gravitate towards the people that you have common experience with.
Right. And it was not until then that I realized I had way more in common with those folks than I did with ABCs who grew up in the States.
Whereas before that, you might think that you have more in common with them or that you do have something in common with them.
Yeah.
Okay. How about you, Mike? How was so you lived in the States and then you moved back to Taiwan. You went back to the States. Can you tell me about that journey a little bit?
Well, I think so. I felt the culture shock a couple times, actually, 3 or 4 times. So the first time was I went to kindergarten here in Taiwan for a year when I was 5 or 4. When I was 4, and I went back to the States. I had forgotten all my English, so I went back. I had an accent, when I was speaking English, and I kind of got bullied a little bit. on the bus and stuff by kids who, ching chong, whatever. And but it didn't it kind of just I brushed it off because I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm American. I'm from here. I just went away for a year and forgot how to speak to you. That's all.
Yeah.
And so that was the first time. Then the second time I went through culture shock was coming to Taiwan at the age of 13. And that was a big one because I was already, deeply rooted in the Maryland community where I'm from. And I just felt like coming here, it was so foreign and so un-American, right? Like I had become really strongly American and believed in American values, like going to the mall or consumerist principles, if you're going to have a sandwich shop, you'd better have enough options for me to, get the sandwich I want, right? But
interesting.
that kind of thing doesn't really translate over here, where it's more like we're going to give you whatever sandwich we got,
Yeah.
So stuff like that. But after about a year in Taiwan, I just it clicked and I just started to love it. And I just became part of the TAS community and made really, really good friends, so that the third time I got culture shock was going back to the States. And I went to St. Louis for university, and that was a big one. Again, it was huge because I'm coming from, TAS, which is not just, Taiwanese Americans, but Swedish Americans, white Americans and Africans, we were all together. And everyone had this sort of global perspective. And then going to St. Louis, where it's a great school, but most of the students are coming from the surrounding area. So St. Louis, so it would be Chicago, Minnesota, some far-flung ones would be New York and California. But, the kind of perspective that they had compared with the people that I had gone to high school with was pretty different. So that was... I would say it was kind of a tough time, and it was the first time that I really felt lonely, this kind of isolation. Being in the Midwest didn't help because it's just a plain.
Right,
there's no ocean, there's nothing. It's
not like a
flatness.
metropolis, like maybe LA or
and it's
obviously
not a
New York.
metropolis, yeah.
Mm.
But the skies there are just so big it can be suffocating. So yeah, I think that was
poetic, man. Yeah.
I think what Kevin was saying with he was clinging to the Taiwanese people at school. It's not just cultural affinity. It's this sense of warm collective belonging that I felt for the first time when I came here to Taiwan, and that I never felt in the States in the same way. And so
I mean, you can't really compare St. Louis to Seattle, where it's basically a walking Chinatown. Not as bad as other places, but
Mm-hmm.
But what I'm saying is it transcends race. It's not just a race or a linguistic thing. It's
Mm-hmm.
a cultural belonging, from this collectivist society that is the Greater China culture, that isn't in the American upbringing, right?
And so you drew on those experiences, I guess, going back and trying to assimilate and everything, and you created this show. The show's a comedy, right? Can you talk about maybe the influences that were in the show that you can find in the show? Maybe you drew from your life in some way, maybe not the comedic aspect, maybe just the what you're talking about, feeling suffocation.
Yeah, well, I mean, the show's about a group of international students, basically, right? Mm-hmm. So they're like us in that they went to school in Greater China, Asia, and now they're in the States, and they're facing this American culture for the first time. And that isolation, that loneliness that you feel, that's definitely one of the strong source materials for the show, because first of all, it brings the gang of characters together, right? But it also it exaggerates the weirdness of America, the intensity of the people there, the individualism that we didn't have growing up, and having to finally, I mean, not even finally, having to face this country full of people who think every single person is alone in the world. That's not something that we're born into in Asia.
Mm-hmm.
But also, I think, speaking to that, the international studying abroad experience is so unique that not everyone's is the same. So the feelings I felt definitely weren't the feelings he felt, 100%. And we're not saying it's actually one of the reasons why we're doing this cartoon in the first place, is that we're not trying to be hey, we're doing this show on international students, and that this is the international student experience. So, you know, a kid who went through that might go like, hey, you know, that's not accurate. You know, actually, when I was there, I hung out with these people. I did this. Right. So, it being a cartoon almost, so the experience won't be magnified in that every little detail is going to be, you know, examined and people are trying to relate to it. That's still what we're trying to do in some sense, but at the end of the day, it's just, is it funny? Like,
right.
Did we take you to, you know, go through a fun journey, a fun world, a different world, which is, you know, the most reason people choose to watch cartoons is that, you know, for the next 20 minutes, I know when I turn this on, I'm going to be in that world.
Right.
And what world are you taking me to?
Right. And it's a unique perspective. It's not supposed to be like representative of everybody's journey, right? Going through, you know. It's
not even ours. It's just, you know, it's
right.
just the show.
And even in the show, I mean, there's like obviously multiple characters, and each character, you know, has a different experience and you know, goes through different things
right.
in the show itself. So yeah, I get that. And speaking of, you know, having an animated series, did you do that like on purpose? Was that like the easiest choice, or was that something like more purposeful to make an animated series like that?
Yeah, pretty much the easiest choice. Because so we were both working at a comedy platform called Haha Tai, and we were just brainstorming of ideas and of like web series or like, you know, longer series or just one-offs. We were just brainstorming, and the thing that we both hit upon was, wow, what if we had a group of you know, ESL kids from Asia going to the States? That would be an amazing show. But how are we going to film in America? You know, it's like we've never even worked there before. Like, it's another animal, and it's expensive, and actors. Like, oh no, let's make it a cartoon. Like, oh, that would be perfect. And then we could like exaggerate America the way that we see it, right? So like, for example, when I walk into a supermarket over there, it just feels like a cavern. You know, it feels like a warehouse or, you know, a cathedral. Like, it's so big, and that can kind of translate using a camera. But if you draw it as a cartoon, you could literally draw like the Batcave or whatever, you know, something enormous. And yeah, we thought cartoon format would be perfect.
The only thing we didn't foresee is that it's not actually cheaper to draw than to fly over and film it and
like
get
to
actors.
animate.
Yeah, it's not. That's something we overlooked the first time, but now we know. Yeah. And we're still sticking to that and animation.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's not actually cheaper if you're talking about professional level comparisons between professional level animation and professional level filming. But we could do it, which is what we did with our Kickstarter, is that literally Kevin, Drew, and I animated this 2-minute trailer. And we could do that without leaving our chairs, basically, right? Without getting any other actors except for the main actor, Mike Sway. So in that sense, it was cheaper and easier to pull off, right? We can just imagine the scene. And, you know,
realize it, I guess.
Realize it. Yeah.
And speaking of, I guess, the animation and everything, it kind of reminded me of South Park, and also in its, like, I guess, its comedic voice. Did you draw on other influences, or did you get the tone of the show from, I guess, consuming media, like all these like animated series out there right now, like South Park, BoJack Horseman, I watch Big Mouth, stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, 我是电视儿童. Like, I'm a TV kid growing up, so, and I watched a lot of cartoons, and so, yeah, definitely what Kevin and I share in common is that in the last 2-3 years, we've both really gotten into, not South Park, Rick and Morty and BoJack Horseman. And, like, these two shows are epic in different ways, but they have something in common, which is they're not just cartoons, like, making fun of something or doing silly stuff and then resetting at the end of every episode. They're actually like serial stories that, you know, tell a story from episode 1 of season 1 to like episode 10 of season 4. Right? It's like one long story where then you have much more material to work with in terms of like human storytelling, right? Beyond the bizarre, wacky cartoon stuff. And that also speaks to the nature of what people are watching, for what the format that people are watching shows on now, which is like Netflix and, you know, YouTube even, and these internet platforms where you can just literally binge watch shows. So that we drew on that a lot. What else?
To kind of tangent off that is that what people see on the Kickstarter right now, this trailer we made, it really doesn't showcase, the full scope of the show we want to go for, which is, Rick and Morty, BoJack, right? Like their episodes really are driven by human stories, right? By very real themes and elements in life, and on the surface level, the trailer we made, it just seems like funny scenes put together, and sometimes it's really hard to hit our point with that because, again, humor is very subjective. So one person might find the whole thing distasteful and not funny at all, whereas another person might love it. So there's no common. I don't think there's a common theme that draws people in, right now. Which I think if we were to do a successful show, even if you've never been to the States, you've never studied abroad, you can enjoy the story just as much as someone who did. And that's what we're trying to go for, which is, Rick and Morty. No one can relate to having, a crazy science grandfather, genius grandfather, but everyone can enjoy the show.
Right, because of the character development and I guess the human aspect of the show. Mm-hmm. So you're trying to go through that. I guess like there'll be one long arc of character development with, spikes of adventure and hilarity in between. Can you talk about the process of, the writing and the animation, all that stuff? Like how did it all come together?
The idea sparked when we were both working at Haha Thai, and that was like 3 years ago. Mm-hmm. And so at first it was just an idea, but as Kevin and I continued to work on other filming projects, we kept coming back to it. Like we kept being like we did a series for Chinese platform Youku, where we traveled to Brazil and Los Angeles to film some gamer events like esports. But during that time, all the time that we spent together, throwing around ideas, coming up with funny stuff, it always would come back to ESL. Like, yeah, but if someday we could make ESL, wouldn't that be the best? And then eventually that turned into like starting to take notes. Like every time, we had an interesting idea that would be good for ESL, we would just write it down. And, the phone is an easy place to put it. And eventually that became like an outline on the computer where it was like typing all of the ideas out. It kind of like scattered, right? But eventually that slowly became like a full-on outline and then a script. And so that took that like process, that like trickling down of ideas, that probably took like a year and a half, just like not even trying to work on ESL. And then we actually decided, okay, let's really do this. And what happened was we wrote a script, and then we took it. So we were our friend Mike Sui, who's an internet celebrity in China and now a mainstream like actor in film and TV. He asked Kevin to go over there and help him out with shooting some funny skits. Right.
And at that time we already it was one of the periods we were, we stopped on working on ESL, and so I was there with Mike. We were talking about doing some skits, filming some videos with him. And then that was when I decided to not really pitch him, but we're sitting around just hanging out, having a few beers, and I pulled out my computer and read him the script. And he, at that moment, he was really captivated by it. He loved it, and he said, "Yeah, we genuinely like we got to do this someday." That was the moment for me that I, like what is this all for? Why am I here doing videos, doing film, if I'm not doing my passion project?
Right. That like cemented like your desire and will to carry this through.
Right. And I remember calling him from the airport like, "Yo, whatever you're doing right now, drop it. We got to go for this. We got to go for this once and for all. Otherwise we're just going to sit around and 10 years going to pass by and we're still taking notes."
Yeah.
So,
and regret, right?
Yeah. And then
we sat around for another year. So.
Yeah.
And then by that time, we're not gonna. The show we do isn't gonna be about international students. It's gonna be about trying to make it in the film industry and failing.
Right.
That's the story we're gonna tell by then.
how did it come, like the animation and the voice acting, like how fast did that come along? And
like I said, we then literally not sat around, but we did other stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, when that happened, that cemented that we were going to do it, and then we slowly, because we had to wait also for Mike Sway because he's busy, and so eventually an opening came, and we said, please come to Taiwan. And he luckily had his own like idea of a project that he wanted to do, so he did come.
Mm-hmm.
And we sat him down. We like forced him to do the voice recording on the script, and then we did his project. And then what we did was we did an edit of the voice, right? Then Kevin put in the voice for Brian, and we got some other voices from our friends. And we recorded the voice, and we did a short animated proof of concept, which was like a 3-minute, very, very rough thing. The reason that, so at that point, we were just thinking, okay, we just want to make something that we can then show people, right? It doesn't have to be good. We're just going to try we're going to try to do what we can rather than sit around. And so we went on YouTube, and we looked up how to draw cartoons. And literally watched like 2 or 3 of these videos and took out notebooks. Kevin went out and bought some notebooks and some pencils. And
so it was just like that. You just
erasers.
Taught yourself and did it.
Yeah, I was just like, I was still like, are you sure we can't just hire an animator and illustrator? I mean, I'm looking at my drawings and going like, yeah, I haven't like sketched in 10 years, 10, 15 years, like, what about the animation? He's like, no, I got it. He just said, I got it. And I'm like, okay, if you have that, then let's just do it.
Okay. How hard was the animation to learn?
The actual animation was not that bad, but that's because I had done Flash before, and I had been editing video for like 10 years. So it kind of just like flowed from that. Plus, YouTube is an incredible resource for stuff like this. It's
for
actually, yeah. I mean, I remember saying to Kevin during this process, like, man, people can do anything now. Like, literally, our potential is limitless because of the internet. Like, we can just everything is within our reach.
Yeah,
and
being able to learn anything or find something.
Yeah. So that's it was. So the first rough animation we did came out of that, and it took like 2 months. The first one?
Yeah, about.
Yeah, it took about 2 months, and we did this rough animation, and then we started like throwing it around, pitching it around, and at that point we decided we needed to rewrite the script entirely.
So, oh, really?
Yeah.
So what was like the initial concept or conceit of the show?
It hasn't changed that much, but different characters have been coming in. We've been like slowly molding the characters. The characters have like been coming to life, right? Because originally it was just Billy and Brian, and Billy was the guy who's sort of somewhat modeled on Mike Sway in that he's like a hustler. He's like, fast talking, he likes hip hop, and he wants to just be a successful human being, like at the top of the heap. So whatever, he wants to be Elon Musk, he wants to be Bill Gates, right? Mark Zuckerberg, all rolled up into one. And Brian is like the opposite of him, where he doesn't want to do anything except for stay in his room and play video games. But from there, we've really, really gotten deep into who these characters are, like who their parents are, like why Billy's dad, where did Billy's dad go his whole life, stuff like that, and also like what's really driving Billy at the heart of Billy, and that's the kind of thing that didn't happen overnight, and that is still continuing to happen. It's like he's alive now, and he's like starting to grow up a little bit, and he's maturing, and that's the stuff that. Man, you can't really replicate, or you can't really like speed that. Yeah, you can't really rush that part. And I think, a lot of shows probably. I think we're really lucky in that we didn't have any sponsorship or investment up until now.
Right.
Because we were able to do other projects, but continue to think about this and let it kind of grow on its own. And even through this animation process, which, especially the actual animation on After Effects, is a lot of grunt work. A lot of like repetitive movements, not that creative, but the fact that I spent, 2 weeks just like animating mouth shapes, that gave the idea a chance to like take form and kind of 发酵, like how do you say that? Ferment.
Fa xiao.
Fa xiao. It gave
Close,
it a chance to it gave it a chance to ferment in my head, right? Whereas if this were a deadline and there was an investor and it was like, you guys have to finish the pilot, we would have rushed it. And I mean, I'm glad that we've been taking this time.
It's a better show because of it.
Right.
So this show is dealing with stereotypes. Is there any worry in your mind about any sort of backlash or maybe offending people or maybe not getting it quite right or like anything like that?
Definitely.
Of course, yeah.
I mean, even with this trailer on the Kickstarter page we made, there are scenes out there that, at the moment of conceit, we were like, this is funny. But then I think I kind of second guess more often than Mike does. Like, I'll hear maybe one or two opinions, and I'm easily like, that might be a little too much or too crazy. But then at the end of the day, I think we have to risk it in order to pursue comedy, because if we're sitting there and worried, what both of, I think what I'm trying to say is we're the filter, right? We're not gonna blatantly create something that's offensive and just out of the blue, right? That's not my core and Mike's core. So I think we kind of just have to, our process right now is already pretty established in terms of what we think is appropriate and not appropriate. Mm-hmm. And obviously we're nowhere near the level of, Trey Parker and Matt Stone doing South Park. They really don't give up,
Yeah, they don't care.
They don't care.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing about being like East and West, that like our unique background is that we're trying to, with ESL, we're trying to insert ourselves into the discourse of both American popular culture and Asian popular culture, right? And so we actually consume a fair amount of both sides. And so, like, you're saying, like, the question is 尺寸, right? Like the where do you draw the line? Mm-hmm. And I think because we're from both places, I think we have a unique advantage to be able to step on the line without crossing it, right? And I would say that if you look at the American comedic discourse, that's a little bit over the top for what we want to make, right? If you think about like Chris Rock or Dave Chappelle or South Park, that's like a little bit over, right? Mm-hmm. But if you think about the Chinese comedic discourse, it's way less than we want to do, right? Mm-hmm. Way more conservative, way more sort of muted. Right. So I think we're trying to find that intersection. Mm-hmm. Yeah, if it's a Venn diagram, that intersection.
So to give an example, one of the scenes, specifically the scene that I was worried about was obviously the one that we showed a KKK rally. And it was interesting because we got comments where people said that was their favorite scene, because we wanted to get feedback. So we asked every one of our friends, or friends of friends, what was your favorite scene? What did you dislike the most? So that was actually one of the most popular, like the funniest scenes for people. But we've also gotten comments where it's like, I wanted to pledge more, but that scene kind of was a little offensive to me, and they didn't say why. It's just like, I guess seeing a KKK member is offensive. Mm-hmm. But the whole reason for showing that scene isn't to like glorify KKK or nothing like that. It's like we're doing it to make fun of them. And I know it's hard to show in 15 seconds, but I mean, at that moment I realized, we really can't worry too much about crossing the line, because if we're trying to tell a story and we have a point we want to make, just again, like deep down, I know we're not going to cross the line, because we're just not that type of people.
Yeah. Back to Mike's point, I guess the more you consume, like media-wise, the more you kind of develop your sensibilities of where the line could be and where your line is, right? So obviously you shouldn't worry too much about that. And I know like comedians, right? They say like when you're on stage, when you're like in character, when you're like, producing a product, you can't worry about what everybody in the crowd is thinking or what a heckler might say, because like, this is your thing. This is your product. You got to just like, you got to own it. Can't listen to like can't listen to all the backlash that might occur, unless you're like, I don't know, super racist or like, I don't know, super offensive, right? Obviously. But back to the KKK scene, it really reminded me of, have you guys seen Bad Boys 2? Or like when they open up the movie and they're in a KKK rally and stuff and all that stuff.
I remember that scene.
Yeah, dude, like that's what I first thought of when I saw the trailer. And I mean, I didn't think that was offensive, and I thought it was funny, but that kind of shows, like you are going to deal with, some things that, might be sensitive and touchy to certain people, and I guess you just got to make sure that, you do it right. But are there any other like themes or issues that you may address like on purpose, in depth in the show, or like, throughout the arc of the show that you want to talk about now?
I think I don't think I've completely explained. I mean, it's hard to completely explain it, but the East and West thing that I mentioned before, I think what I want to add is, it's Chinese students going to, or Chinese and Taiwanese students going to the U.S. And looking at America from this outsider perspective. So on the one hand, it's kind of like, by making fun of American culture, it's bringing awareness to people who've never been there or people who misunderstand it. Because once you can laugh at something, I think you have a deeper understanding of that. So that's sort of the East to West. But the West to East is, America, and actually internationally, people are interested in the Chinese part of the world right now. Like it's a hot topic, and right now in universities in the States and Canada and Australia, there's an inflow of Chinese students, right? It's a real thing that's happening, is like these clusters of Chinese students who are quote unquote taking over the school. And so on that level, we are bringing, our characters are in no way stereotypes. Like they're complex, interesting, crazy, insane, and terrible, good. Like
they're characters, not caricatures.
They're characters. They're the main character. They're the heroes of our show. And so in that way, and they speak Chinese and English. So in that way, for a Western audience, which we also hope to access, they're going to see Chinese students in a totally different light, and also Chinese culture. Not obviously, we're not going to be didactic, like have characters talk about Chinese culture. In China, we do this. No, it's not like that. But in the way that they interact with each other, you're going to see elements of like the collectivist culture that we come from. You're going to see elements of, the way we deal with our families, and, the way that we deal with each other, and the linguistic differences and different ways of thinking between East and West. And so in that way, we bring the East to West as well. So, I mean, we're really excited about the show, and we just think it's the show that we should be making as bicultural nomads, the people who can't really pin down their identity.
I definitely identify with that, especially being biracial too. I mean, there's just like, I guess, an added thing to that. But going to international schools and growing up here, and then in Korea, Beijing, and then the United States. I mean, I look at shows, right, and like each show might have like, a little piece of me, right? And but I feel like watching the trailer, I could just really identify with it. And I don't think I ever felt that before, just like watching a show or watching a trailer and be like, dude, that's like speaking my truth or something.
Word, man.
Yeah, dude. And it was it was good to see. And I feel like a lot of people who do go to international schools are going to feel that way, because there's so many people that go to international schools, right? And like not just in Asia, but like worldwide, who like, I guess, operate and have been and assimilated in a different culture that isn't really told very well in media, right? Like we know it, but you don't really see it represented, right? So I'm really excited for the show. And
awesome.
So do you have like not deadline, but do you have I guess like a date or a time when you think like you might be able to get like the full first episode out versus the full season, and so on and so forth?
Well, right now our Kickstarter is about to end, so by the time this airs, I think it already ended.
Would have ended. Yeah.
But we're pretty, regardless of the outcome, we're pretty dead set on making this pilot, and we've already been exploring different options and how to make that happen. And I think there's no certain time deadline for us per se, but we're gonna set a good 3 months. We're gonna set 3 to 4 months that we're just gonna be completely dedicated to making the first episode, and making it the right way. And I think, starting from now, we're going to make that happen. And we're going to use that first episode as hopefully the biggest selling point, because that's the first time we get to tell the full story on what this show is about. It's more than just gags and visual quirks. It's there's a story.
It's a fully fleshed out show.
Yeah.
Best of luck to you guys. I really appreciate you guys coming on.
Thanks, Alex.
Taiwan Talk, and I'm excited.
Thanks, man. It's great to
Means
see
a
you.
lot. Thanks.
Hey everybody, I hope you enjoyed our conversation. Keep your eye out for their pilot, which hopefully will be ready later this year. And if you're interested in project management in a startup culture or have animation experience, check out their Facebook page. They're hiring people to help make their vision. A big thank you to Michael and Kevin for coming on the show, and thanks to Tiffany and Eric for putting it on my radar. Thanks for tuning in to Taiwan Talk, brought to you by ICRT FM 100. I'm Alex Lewis.